You're going to get a notification that we're going live.
Okay.
And then we'll await the echo. Yeah, first time live. There we go. First time live on the Loosh Tube in a few weeks. If y'all see us, hear us, give us a thumbs up.
There's your echo. Now it's gone.
Okay, awesome. And we'll just wait for Josh to pop back in. Yeah, we're just had our second strike on the old Loosh Tube get taken off, so we're now back to one strike. You know how that is, Josh.
Yeah. Well, 3 strikes, you're out, right? In their game, at least.
Yeah, I
And
had
they
to go
keep
to
finding strikes with stuff that's we posted like 3 years ago stuff. So the bots are working overtime trying to get rid of us right now.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was the last one was literally from late 2020, I believe.
Oh, wow. So, maybe I have to go back and edit some of my videos then too.
And now they have re-education camp you go through where you go through an online course on why you've been naughty and why their way of medical re-education is the way. It's wild. And
what?
It's, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty funny. But anyhow, we're all about building the parallel new, and we're just forking off the old systems, and it's all about building the new. So I'm going to hit record, guys, and fire this up.
Cool.
Here we go.
Yeah, they took Mike and I into a little room and did electrotherapy to our frontal lobes. So we'll behave from now on.
Perfect. Just like when we get a speeding ticket, we go through the online course.
Yeah.
They're very effective, I'm sure.
Okay, here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winner, and I'm here as always with the Dawn of Alfa Vedic, the Godfather, Dr. Barre Lando.
I like the Godfather title. That might be my favorite so far.
Well,
after all, I did
Italian roots.
Yeah, and I did just formalize my Italian citizenship too.
Yeah, that would be fun to talk about on a future cast and the benefits of that.
They want me to learn the language, so I spend, I don't watch Netflix or anything anymore. I watch Italian TV. It's a trip. It's great. So anyway, carry on, Mike.
Sorry. A lot of men in their 20s and 30s living with their mothers. Great television. My son's actually learning Chinese and Russian right now. So he must, my 13-year-old. So Chinese at school, and then he's decided on his own to learn Russian, and he's literally speaking Russian already a lot.
The Russian will probably bring a drone to your doorstep, huh?
Well, I think he's on to something maybe here, learning these 2 languages. But I will say that I said, if you can master Russian, I will take you there. And my wife, of course, and her mom was at the house at that time, where their ears perked. Really? You're going to try to go there? Isn't there a war going on? And I said, we got some connects, though. We got some connects through Alfa Vedic that would take us to the places that we'd want to go to. So maybe let it calm down a little bit, but
Russia's an amazing country, wonderful people, and of course they're being targeted right now because they won't fall in line with the IMF. So, they'll prevail though.
Well, interesting times in this wonderful world that we live in, and we're excited to end out the year. This is our final Alfacast of 2024. Wow, the year has flown by, for me at least. With Josh Trent, and I'm really looking forward to bringing him in. We had a wonderful chat with him on his platform a few months back. If you haven't caught that, definitely go to his website. It's in the show notes below, wellnessforce.com. And he's been in the game a long time, and his content is superb. They do a great job over there. And as he was saying before we were about to come on, he's an open book, and he's really just all about exploring and finding truth. And very much like us, using health as sort of his grounding foundation. And I look forward to going anywhere today with him. having this conversation. Barre, anything to bring up to the community? We wrap up the year before we bring Josh in.
No, let's get into it, and looking forward to this conversation. And as I did in our pre-podcast write-up, it's really the perfect way to wind down the Alfa Vedic podcast season. Just going out with Josh, who brings his inspiration and enthusiasm, and there's a lot more to be positive about if you get your eyes off the news cycles out there. So looking forward to this one.
Oh, indeed. Even indeed. Well, yeah, wellness and wisdom for 2024 really was a theme. A lot of people waking up into their true innate powers to heal and the wisdom that comes from that. And just when you think one year can't out top the other in world turmoil, institutionalized deception, and war lust from the quote boys downstairs, 2024 reached new heights in ludicrosity. Ludicrosity? Is that right?
Ludicrosity.
Going to ludicrous speed. Despite the all-out effort to orchestrate chaos on every level, we're on to them. And the mass yearning for a more peaceful world has reached critical mass. With a most auspicious new year just on the horizon, we can't think of a better guest to close the 2024 Alfacast season than special guest Josh Trent, who brings his trademark enthusiasm and positivity. Dr. Barre and I had the honor to be hosted by Josh on his Wellness and Wisdom podcast, which you can watch on his platform. As I said, we're looking forward to another inspirational roundtable as we leave news cycles and political theater behind to delve deeper into the inevitability of the third and final golden age. Josh Trent lives in Austin, Texas, with his love, Carrie Michelle, son Nova, daughter Naya, and a cat named Cleo. He is the host of the Wellness Plus Wisdom podcast and the creator of the Breathe, Breath Plus Wellness program. Josh has spent the last 20 plus years as a trainer, researcher, plus facilitator, discovering the physical and emotional intelligence for humans to thrive in our modern world, helping humans liberate their mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial self through podcast programs and global community that believe in optimizing our potential to live life well. After publishing over 400 high-level interviews with some of the most respected minds in the health, wellness, and self-help industries, Josh has been spotlighted in major wellness media outlets. He shares how he grew up without the physiology or mental tools to deal with the stresses of life and how he used fitness as a catalyst for wellness. He discovered that most people use the vehicle of fitness to start letting go of weight and energy that doesn't serve them until they ultimately realize that wellness is a continuum or a life path. You can check out all of his work on wellnessforce.com. Stoked to have Josh with us today. Take it away, Barre.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to use ludicrous speed instead of ludicrosity, but I wasn't certain how many people actually remember the movie Spaceballs back when movies used to be funny. So, awesome movie. Josh, great to see you here, and thanks for making time for us today.
I'm excited.
We want to hear all about your projects, and you're doing great things out there. I would really like to get into the whole fitness aspect too, because I think that's just a major component. And as you aptly understand, it's not just about fitness, it's about instilling certain attributes into your being. And I like to look at fitness as a triad of flexibility, endurance, and, power, which is the resistance exercises. And, when you train diligently in those and embody those in your physicality, it really, in my situation, it really launched me on, a path where I started looking at things a little deeper. I'll just say that. So, and I think it's really overlooked by a lot of folks that are, seeking spirituality and different practices and everything. They sometimes skip that grounding and in part, and then just, in training your neurology with those attributes that I think are going to carry you a long way. Also, being in the health business myself, people that were already intensely in that kind of training, when I work with athletes, they just always seem to get better quicker because, whether it was for an injury or some kind of metabolic condition, because they just had that tenacity and that focus. And it was a goal. They understood my role as a doctor was actually a coach, not somebody who was there to fix them. So we just had very good relationships and outcomes, so they're my favorite people. So, Josh, why don't we maybe start with your background, how you got into all this in the first place, and I know I think you kind of got on the path of fitness, and then that led open to other doors. But you correct me, just kind of give us a little timeline, and then we can open it up to, we'll riff off of that afterwards.
Yes.
And thanks again
Wow.
for being with us.
Yeah, so
Thanks
good,
for
guys.
having us too on your show. It was really a lot of
You're
fun.
welcome. You're
Yep.
welcome. Yeah, there was a vibe. Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Mhm.
So I'm glad I'm here. And I love that we're starting with the physical because that was absolutely hands down my entry point to learning about my emotions, learning about my mind, learning about spirituality, and then learning about the duality of finance here in this 3D construct. So yeah, the physical is everything, right? I suffered in my life a lot. And I think all of us suffer if we're human. And then we make meaning of that suffering. So at the time when I was really young, like I was born into a situation, guys, where my mom was manic bipolar. My dad left home when I was 2 months old. And I guess you could say I chose a situation that my soul really wanted to have maturation from. And when I look back on that, at the time, when I was young, when I was a teenager, I was really, really struggling with weight. I played football in high school, which was amazing because it was a great outlet for my anger, for my physicality. And however, when I got home, the situation was still the same. My mom was having her episodes. We'd go to my dad's occasionally, and he did the best they could, as did my mom. Yet they just were not afforded the psychological tools, the consciousness, and really the affluence that all of us here on this podcast are afforded just by the very fact that we're here. We have time affluence. We have attention affluence where we can actually absorb these concepts and put them to use. Like it's so beautiful, but I didn't have that back then. And so I went on this kind of fumbling, bumbling, bloody nose journey to seek out this meaning of the pain that I was experiencing. And the pain was I'm out of high school, I'm 280 pounds, I've ballooned up. I was still eating like I was weight training and playing sports, but I wasn't. I was baling cardboard at a Vaughn's in El Cajon in Southern California and just hating my life. I mean, just really in a dark place. And I found automotive. I went into the automotive industry and I became a Mercedes-Benz technician, still feeling that darkness, feeling that pain, not knowing what to do with it, not even knowing what I didn't know was there, which was this unconscious incompetence that when I press down my emotions and when I push down the things that I'm feeling and cover them with weed and alcohol and partying and drugs, which was very typical for my environment at that time, that I was actually creating a bomb that would go off later. And I'm super grateful for that bomb because I left everything. I moved to Hawaii in the early 2000s. I think it was 2003, 2004, something like that. And when I got there, I just took this deep breath. I'll never forget, I was in Oahu and I had found surfing and I was really attracted to the feminine energy of the ocean. I didn't even know what energies were at that time. I'm not going to bullshit y'all. But I just felt this peace that I'd never felt before from the ocean. And it really took me on this journey of how do I let go of this weight? I started with the physical, right? And you mentioned that earlier. But what I found in becoming a trainer, and that led me to a 10-year career in fitness training in private studios and in big box gyms, I realized that I was just seeking some relief from my own pain. And I thought that when I'd become a trainer or a helper towards others, that I would get to the bottom of my pain. But I've never actually talked about this before. I'm just remembering it. I was printing out a deal for a new client in my first couple of years of personal training. And I was so caffeinated. I was taking hydroxycut at the time, which is like this hyper stimulus that gets people through the day when they wake up at 4 a.m. and train till 8 at night. That's what most personal trainers did back then and maybe do now. And I had this moment. It was the first moment where I actually was aware of myself. And I knew in that moment when I was printing out the deal in a hurry to make the money, this wasn't everything. This physical thing that I was chasing, I had a six pack at the time, but I would go and chew tobacco and drink and do all these unhealthy things. I was seeking something deeper, but I didn't know what that deeper was. But the physical got me there because in reflection, I can see the truth that the more that I focused on, really, let's be honest, a fixation on how I physically looked, it was a cover for all the pain of being made fun of being overweight, of trying to shine light on my clients and trying to shine light on other people so that the dark part of me, the beliefs, the stories, never had to be illuminated. And this is why I've this year come strongly on a concept of a real leader, you guys, holds a lantern. If I'm a leader, I'm shining a lantern up so the light shines on my things, my stuff, my work, and my clients, and my community, and my audience. That's a leader. But at the time, guys, I was just shining a flashlight on other people. Really, like, let's be honest, just you can call it cognitive dissonance or narcissism in a way, spiritual narcissism. I'm just going to spend my life shining light on other people. Then I won't have to see what's between me and the dark. And I fell into that trap. And then eventually I had a dark night of the soul that was so severe, it led me into podcasting. And then bam, 9.5 years later, here we are.
Well, better to have a dark night of the soul early on rather than a midlife crisis, when you're 50 or 60.
Yeah.
Boy, I relate to so much of what you're saying. You mentioned Hawaii, and having raised my family there and probably return someday. Hawaiian people are very special in that they do embody the essence of the island, which is very soft. You can call it feminine, whatever. So you have the men, which are a great example how you can be hard and soft at the same time. And, in martial arts training, they always kept saying, loose, tight, loose, tight, loose, tight. You had to be both at the same time. And, Hawaiian men can be absolutely badass, but then they also have that softness, in other words, something I would call balance. And, just because they come from a culture, of course, the culture is under attack right now, but, it's still alive and well, within the islands themselves. So just a great place. I'm glad you had some experience there. And I think that's what, a lot of men in our culture, of course, when we're taught that maybe there's something wrong with masculinity and that we have to ask women how to be masculine. It's actually about just bringing of course, that's what a happy marriage is about. You can play your role. You can, like what we call in Chinese medicine, the Wei Qi, you're the outer protective exterior that protects the inner yin core. And, every family, when you have a happy marriage, there's that kind of give and take and allowing each other to play those roles. And it's not a competition or thinking that one gender is better than the other. So, just like Gurdjieff said in the old Sufis, if you want the quickest path to spiritual enlightenment, get in a relationship because it's not only bring out all your stuff, but it's if you can pull it off, you're gonna achieve that balance a lot sooner.
I so relate to what you're saying. I just happened to pick this t-shirt today for y'all watching, and here, I'll move the mic. There's a triangle. There's an upside down triangle on the t-shirt. It's the symbology of water. And it's in my podcast logo because I'm self-aware enough to know that one of my deepest edges as a man is to learn how to love, accept, and nourish the feminine part of me. That's why it's in my logo. I'm not hiding. I know my edge. I'm aware of my edge. And the more I can accept this uncomfortable energy that I was never really taught how to feel, because isn't that the truth for most of us men, especially in Southern California in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s? This was not at the dinner table. There was no conversation of like how to be hard and soft at the same time, how to be a man who's connected to his feminine energy. It was actually, let's be honest, it was made fun of. You were like, feminine energy, what are you, a pussy? I mean, that's the kind of consciousness that was around this conversation. But the integration of this feminine side of Josh has been a massive role in the success that I've had. And it's going to inform me later on in ways that I don't know yet, which is why it's so exciting. So whether it's like you had said, the ancient masters that talked about this, or whether it's like us talking about it now, I think the energy of feminine and masculine is the most important thing for us to master, because if I reject any part of it, then I'm rejecting me. I'm pushing myself away from myself, and that just creates more disharmony.
Well, past cultures had rites of passage for both men and women. And of course, the exercise for men wasn't to go out and watch a ball game and, drink beer. It was, you really
Yeah.
tested your mettle and put to a test probably a lot more severe than any of us that had to endure two-a-days in football.
Yeah.
It was gnarly. But at the same time, you developed that inner, expanded bandwidth that is more, let's just say, more of a natural tendency for the yin side of nature.
Mm.
So they were able to develop both sides, and their culture promoted that. And I think a lot of us are getting back to that.
I've done a vision quest, and I don't know if y'all have explored this on the Alfacast, or if you guys have done something similar, like a vision quest where you fast in nature.
Hmm. We uh,
It,
we homeschooled our kids, and they went through a several-week process out in the wilderness doing that. That was when they were like 15.
oh,
That was
yes.
the next step in homeschooling.
Mine was 40, so I didn't get, I think most of us men, I know I'm blanketing statementing here, but most men in modernity don't go through rite of passage like we were meant to in
Hmm.
community and tribe. And I waited until I was 40 through the guidance of Tim Corcoran. He has a program called Purpose Mountain. And I did two vision quests, one before my son was born and another. And they were profound because I touched the essence of what you're speaking about. And I didn't know that it was real until I actually experientially did it. And I think it's easy to read, or watch movies like this 300 and Sparta and see the boy with the spear and the wolf and be like, yeah, that's me. But unless you've actually done it, the wisdom's hard to touch. And I think being in nature and fasting is an incredible way to not just as a man go through a maturity process, but also to be at peace to the degree we can with death, because there's a touching of death when you're fasting in nature. And there's this beauty of death as a reminder to live your life, to drink the juice and let it run down your arm and do the things that are lighting you up. If we're not in nature, if we don't go through these kind of processes that have been happening for so long in so many cultures, it's only in modernity here in North America that they've been thrown away and replaced with drinking and all these things that are really deleterious. I think that's a piece of wisdom that I would love to be a voice for in the world, and I am on my podcast. But I love what you're bringing forth.
Hey, could I just ask how long you fasted and a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind sharing
Yeah.
with us that experience? Because that is something I've looked to do for a while. I mean, I take my boys backpacking on multiple nights, and I've told the story of how we got caught in an insane early winter storm and it became life and death. And that was like a rite of
Oh.
passage for them out in the
Oh
middle
yeah.
of the Oregon mountains completely by ourselves and having to survive. Literally took me 2 hours to get a fire started. If we didn't get it started, we'd probably have hypothermia, that kind of situation, which was pretty epic in the end, even though coming out of that, my youngest son said, Dad, I'm never backpacking with you again. But we have since backpacked. But and I think there's something to it, right? Going out in nature, but haven't done the fasting thing. So how long did you
Mm.
fast for, and what was that experience like?
The way in which we did it, and I'll honor this because it wasn't the true humblecha, which is the Native American tradition. That's where you actually do no food, no water. And then if you want to go even deeper, it's the sun dance, and there's a whole system and really beautiful tradition there. But it's only for the chosen. This one was done in the honor of the Native American humblecha, but not a true humblecha. And so you go, and there's an ego stripping process for a day or two. You get clear on exactly what you would like mystery to give you the answer to, and you have to be okay with whatever that answer is. So there's an honoring of the mystery of God, the mystery of nature. That's a seed planted in the garden of your mind before you go out for the fast. And you do a big sweat, lots of singing, lots of prayer, lots of chanting, in a really beautiful sweat lodge that my other mentor Mark built for us. And when I went out there, it was just a little pad, a sleeping bag, and 4 gallons of water, and a little tarp in case it rained. And that's it. No journal, no nothing. And it was 4 days, just water and just prayer and just breath. And I have never connected and been so in tune with nature in my life. I mean, I was mapping how the bees would fly around me. I was paying attention to the trees. At one moment, I was having a psychedelic experience where I had a conversation with my deceased grandfather. I mean, true psychedelic experience with no entheogens whatsoever. And it was honestly, I think it was the third day, second or third day, when if you've ever fasted before, you know that by the second or third day, you're really hungry. And your heart's beating at night because there's increased respiration and your body's going into this mode where it's looking for food. So it wants to amplify your stress hormones. And I was laying on my back, and one of the things I wanted clarity on was this question that I'd felt for the majority of my life, because I have a really big dream. I want to reach a lot of people, not from my ego, but because I really know what it's like to suffer. And I just asked God, like, God, how am I going to do it all? How am I going to do it all? And I've asked this question a lot in my life. How am I going to hold it all? How am I going to grow my business? How am I going to have land and have a family? And how am I going to do it all? And I just heard this voice. I was laying on my back looking at this massive tree. And the voice just said, just keep going. It was like this beautiful, powerful whisper from like a genderless being, just the essence of God that came through and said, just keep going. And I just cried, and I knew exactly what that meant because I had never really learned how to trust myself or trust life up until that moment. And in full honesty, I'm still learning how to trust life and trust myself. But that was a really big psychic shattering because I learned that without food and disconnected from everything in the modern world, calendars, notifications, tech, and even any breathwork ceremony I'd done or any psychedelic ceremony I'd done, it was this incredible power of fasting in nature that brought me to the truth of my deepest wound. And that was, if I can't trust my parents growing up, if they're not safe, if the world isn't safe, if I don't know how to feel safe, then I'm going to die. I mean, it brought me to my death. And then, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen when I die? Then I would actually have the answer to the mystery itself. So there's never actually any, quote, death. There's a physical death that I know I'm going to feel one day, that we're all going to feel. But it was touching that and being reminded of that death that allowed me to see its opposite, which is truly living my life and learning how to trust and being open and vulnerable when I don't trust, being curious about how I can trust more, about how I can love my woman deeper, about how I can be a great father to my son and daughter, and how I can actually thank my father and my mother for the opposite of what I want in my life and how they showed me through its opposite what it feels like to be in a space where they themselves were struggling so deeply with the wounds from their parents. It's like this big cosmic book we're all in, guys, and we're just a page. And there's millions of pages before us, and there'll be millions of pages after us. And so it was like this psychic shattering of holding on so tightly to life having to be exactly how I think it should be. And it was liberating. It was truly, truly liberating.
And when you can experience that ancestral continuity, it's so powerful because you stop blaming your parents or anybody else because you understand
That's it.
it's one continuous life stream. And now you have the opportunity to free them up as well as yourself. And I don't know if you've ever read the Carlos Castaneda books,
That's
but
so funny. I have one on my on my desk right now.
they're great fun.
Yeah.
But in warrior training, Don Juan always admonished his students to wear death on their left shoulder, just so you always had that awareness, which would inspire you to live every moment with impeccability rather than wasting it.
Yes.
And there's really something, it's not about the death, it's just realizing that every moment is precious and it is a gift.
Didn't he also say, I feel like I've read a passage where he has a phrase that he says, don't let the old man in. Have you heard this before?
I'm not recalling that one.
It's part of
So
the 3 or 4 stages of development, and
yes,
where you get to the
and
old man. Yeah.
don't let the old man in, aka don't allow the challenges of life to steal your enthusiasm, to steal your wonder, to steal your joy in the hardships that we experience. Don't let the old man in. And it was this
Yeah.
beautiful passage that he wrote that's so wise. And I've even heard Winston Churchill say the same thing. I'm not a huge fan of everything Winston Churchill said, but whether it's Teddy Roosevelt or Churchill, they all had some great quotes, didn't they? They
Yeah.
had some really good stuff to say. And he said, the secret to life is going from hardship to hardship without losing enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe he even learned that in a way from the same source that Castaneda or that anyone learned it from.
Yeah, I can attest to that just having a few more years under my belt. People that we grew up with, our peers, that we went to school with and went through life with, you just visualize the folks that give up, which is the
Mm,
majority of people, and you buy into I don't recognize myself when I look in the mirror, but, um, you know, you just don't buy into the retirement concept or the fact that you can't be physical anymore. My six pack has turned into a one pack, but it's about your inner core and just being
right.
vital and having the energy still to appreciate life and to do anything physical, including having physical strength still. So, um,
Dude,
yeah, that's
Bear,
that's a great quote.
I literally last night put out a Substack called Embracing the Inner Child. And in that, I talk about how you multiple times on Alfacast and just in our dialogues stress the point from your perspective, how you've seen peers fall into the retirement age of just the placid sort of sitting on their loins, just waiting for death kind of idea. And age is just a construct. Age is just basically a relativistic concept, and it's not an absolute. And when we can engage in that inner child, as we were talking about on our executive co-op meeting this week, about how quickly, and this actually ties right into what we were talking about before going live, Josh, is like how amazingly quick children can heal.
Mm,
And
mhm.
I think a lot of that has to do with their lack of disbelief. They are not conditioned yet to believe in the indoctrination of the physical materium and how we are reliant upon external sources for everything, right? They just inherently know, their body knows, and their belief systems are set up coming from wherever we come from before we populate back into the realm. We're good, and I expect to be good really quickly here. And they don't even consciously, they're not even thinking that. They just have a knowing that of that. And so if we can engage in that youthful exuberance of imagination and mystery and wonder that the child has, and after all, our body does refresh itself every couple years, right? Like, we have completely different tissues. We're always changing in terms of if you want to believe in cells or not.
I would
But
argue every moment.
yeah, yeah. So why not? I took on surfing a few years ago myself. Having kids obviously helps you stay young, but yeah, find those things to keep you youthful, keep you exuberant, keep you interested, and take on new challenges, because that'll not only keep you young and vital, but I believe it will impact others around you in amazing ways. So, yeah, great points there, guys.
I wonder how you guys feel about this. When you were talking about youth and vitality, it's always what I feel. It's the people that don't have the awareness or the tools or the skill set yet to know what their purpose is and to how to live their life on purpose. That I believe is probably the number one thing that steals joy, that steals vitality. Because if you don't have an undercurrent, if in your unconscious self, and we all know from science and both life that the body is the unconscious mind, right? I was wearing the weight on my body, what emotionally and spiritually I wasn't able to deal with. So it was showing up on my body. And when we were talking about my son, he had a little fracture, like a hairline fracture in his elbow. He was wearing his cast and he's like, "Oh, this is so cool." He was enjoying the process. He wasn't scared. He was in full trust because, like you said, Mike, he didn't know anything else. He's always been in an environment with his dad and his mom that he's trusting, and that's his purpose right now, is just to be a boy, just to be a young, beautiful boy. I think what happens to us in life is our lens gets so sooty and clouded with pain and trauma and things that we think happen to us instead of for us as a growth moment. We get trapped. We get trapped in this bullshit story that's like, oh, well, there's no point to it all. I should just be apathetic. And, oh, we're the Smiths. We're just alcoholics. Or, oh, it's going to be too hard. I'll just get this safe job. It's like this denial of our soul's voice, of why we are actually here. And I think that's probably, in my experience for sure, going through my journey, the number one thing that steals vitality is a lack of purpose. Especially for a man. I can speak as a man. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I know women have their own unique pathway to purpose. But for a man, I've heard a quote once that a man will crawl naked through broken glass to achieve his purpose. And I really believe that if you're clear in your purpose, it gives you vitality. It makes you go. It's what you get up for in the morning, right? Like, why are we doing any of this in the first place? We're all going to pass. We're all going to move on to some other dimension or some place that created us. So why are we doing this in the first place? I think if we can be connected to that, oh, there is like a wellspring of inspiration. There's every day you can get up and say, wow, I'm clear on my purpose. I know what I'm doing for my purpose. I know why I'm doing it. That's an energy resource of abundance that anybody can tap into, and it's all knowing. It's so wonderful. I'm not saying it's easy to craft it and to do it, but at least you have clarity on what it is.
Well, our last time together, we spoke a little bit about money. And, we elaborated on that greatly and what money really means. But
Mm,
money has been institutionalized to the point where people seek that versus vocation or purpose.
no
And
doubt.
again, just when I look at my fellow geriatrics, you see most people that have spent a lifetime doing that, some of them very successfully, but they're very unfulfilled. They still don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Um, and yeah, that's just so on point. We are creative, powerful, creative beings, and each one of us is unique in all of creation, and we have a similar unique contribution to make. And if you thwart that or never discover that, then that just that impediment to our normal creativity is the thing that really wears us out. Because what's the point?
Right. Why are we doing it in the first place? And actually, if I could piggyback, the piece of modernity that's so hard is convenience, because convenience, it's almost like a snake that comes into the garden, you know? And it at first glance, it's like, oh, this Netflix or this food app or this technological thing is going to give me so much convenience and it's going to take away my pain. But over time, it's like when a rock gets worn by water, we start to get worn by the convenience that we trade our dream for. And it happens slowly, slowly, slowly over time. And so unless we're conscious, unless we're aware of giving away our dream or sacrificing our purpose or our spiritual constitution in the name of convenience, then we can go through really a soul loss or a spiritual suicide. I mean, that's what I felt like in corporate America, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everyone in corporate America is going through that. I believe that you could be a part of a team and be super happy, super fulfilled. I'm not shaming or blaming that type of lifestyle. It's fine. But soul loss and spiritual suicide is real, and I think it happens through the vehicle of convenience, or at least perceived convenience. Right? Um, I've felt that very deeply in my life.
What's really fascinating is, well, we talk a lot about, what the old alchemist understood, which was a real complete science back then. They understood and it's even coming back into Western scientific circles where they're starting to understand some of these alchemical or etheric mechanisms that are initiated by our very consciousness and then filter through the different strata to precipitate our experience, our bodies, and everything, no exception. So wouldn't it be wonderful, or won't it be wonderful when schools are teaching that kind of science? Because that is going to allow that one analytical side of ourselves to just reconcile what our heart already knows. And then, you have that, what we like to refer to as the unification of heart and mind. And when you do go through life and experience the aging process, it actually gets kind of fun if you understand some of these principles, because you understand why the age or the appearance of age is happening in your body. You don't go into blame or self-judgment,
Mm,
but you come to the realization that these programmings go so deep through millennia, and we are a product of that. And it's the absolute pinnacle of this warrior journey to just see it happening within your own experience and actually in your body, but then, confront them and not try to struggle with it or deny it, but just understand it. And in the process, even though it's still taking place, you do have a certain buoyancy about you that even is lacking in people much younger these days, especially these days.
mm, That's why we respect the people that we can sense are wise, and we don't care how many wrinkles they have. Like I was going to interview Dr. Gladys McNary or McCary, and we had her on the schedule to interview. I was so excited. And she ended up passing away like a
Uh,
week before we were going to interview. And I was so excited to interview her because she had that buoyancy you're talking about. And you have it as well, right? There, and I remember I was trained a client once, and she was like 95, and she was learning how to do cable rotations, and she was awesome. She was so full of life. And then one day she didn't show up, and I felt a loss because I was like, man, I didn't get to learn enough from you. I wanted to learn more wisdom from you just by you being in my life, because you had that energy, that buoyancy. She never let the old man in, is what I'm saying, right? And it's a testament to what you're talking about, because if we can just be in the curiosity of learning from true elders, like I consider you to be a true elder, right? And Mike, you're on the way as well, right? Because let's be honest, like Bear has years on us, right? And life experience
Mike
on
is
us.
getting pretty old, though.
Okay.
Look at that gray,
He's
baby.
an
Look at
elder in
that
training.
gray.
He's an elder in training, and I would love to be initiated more to be an elder in training, so that when I am of age to be an elder to others, that I've earned it, that it's embodied, that I can really share it. Because how else are we supposed to learn the beautiful concepts that have been passed on, not just through computers, but through written text and word, that you could never find on the internet, that you could never get from just hearing one podcast? It takes time to learn this wisdom. And that time is only going to be filled in a space of curiosity of the person who's seeking it. It's like Rudolf Steiner says in his book, How to Know Higher Worlds: when the initiate has a pure intention in his heart, his or her heart, and they are genuine in their seeking of the knowledge, the teacher who holds that knowledge cannot keep it from them, because the seeker is so genuine in their desire for the wisdom. They're so humble and so genuine in their desire. And I love that in Steiner's work, because it's true. Like the right master appears, the right teacher appears when we're ready and when we're genuine in our seeking for it. But on the flip side, if we're just using the wisdom of our elders for selfish gain, I think those elders can sense it, right? Like
Mhm.
I know you guys have probably felt this. Like people are trying to get the quick fix or the 5 things that are going to make your life liberated, and we can sense that on some level, is what I mean. So it's the pureness and the wholeness of that curiosity that really allows the wisdom to be passed on. And I think that's a art form that we're practicing right now. Maybe that's the undercurrent of the Alfacast and of wellness and wisdom, is this genuine curiosity, not for selfish gain, but just for the curiosity of the wisdom itself. That's the most fun part, anyways.
Well, and I'll just stress that wisdom is different than intelligence. And this is a very important thing to consider moving into the AI sort of revolution, which really AI is just an expression of orthodoxy and an expression of intelligence, but lacking the wisdom. And the wisdom comes from the heart. It comes from the higher source that is divine, that cannot be accumulated no matter how much computing power you have in a synthetic world.
Mm.
And wisdom is what's going to get us past, I think, a lot of the pitfalls of this AI revolution. I believe there is great power to artificial intelligence. In fact, I just shared a really cool Christmas song on our Telegram today that an Alfa Vedic community member made. That he wrote the script using some AI tools, and then it went through like a music generation tool, and it sounds amazing. I was like, is that your voice? He's like, no, it's like a program, but it sounds really cool and it's really funny. Check it out, guys. It's like a truth-oriented Christmas song, all about finding truth and everything. But I only bring this up because while that's powerful, that is just intelligence and it's artificial. It's not wisdom. And wisdom truly is the going to be the thing we're going to need more and more. And I'll just end on this, and maybe we can touch on this a little bit later, because Bear and we briefly mentioned this on exec call this week, but I think these orbs showing up, and I kind of have a feeling now, just from watching hours and hours of footage, it's not just bad camera work that people aren't able to focus correctly with their autofocus, but I'm seeing some quite phenomenal phenomenon out there through amateur photography. I believe these are the angels potentially. I think we're in an amazing time where the wisdom of the angels are showing themselves now. So buckle up, y'all. But yeah,
It's about to
wisdom,
get
so
weird,
crucial,
y'all.
right? Wisdom is separate from it's different than intelligence. Wouldn't you
Well,
say, Barry?
wisdom is knowledge, and knowledge is information becoming experiential. You know, you have to have the experience, and sitting behind a keyboard or reading a book is not experience, it's information, which is good. I like getting information, but that's, like Mike said, not where wisdom emanates from.
Yeah, if I could, like, wisdom is this spiritual filter that's earned through life experience, aka maturity. I think that many people live, but they don't become mature because they haven't worked on their filter. So if I have a wisdom filter, then through my own life experience of pleasure, pain, love, fear, then I can decode, if you will, the truth of what I'm experiencing. But I can't decode it if I've just downloaded it and read it on an audiobook or heard it. What I'm saying is, like, we have to go through this application phase in order to earn the wisdom. You mentioned it. It's about life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of the things that I love that's uncomfortable for me too is actually sharing exactly where I am in the wisdom journey and admitting when I don't know something and having the right to change my mind based on new information that I've put into my spiritual filter that then comes out as more powerful wisdom, more truthful wisdom because of my vulnerability to not have to be perfect all the time. Like, I don't know who said it, but it was something like, the more you know, the more you don't know. It may have been Ken Wilber. I don't know, or someone like him. And the more that I learned, the more, I mean, it's been 700 episodes now on the podcast, which is wild,
Wow.
you guys. Like, just this week, we published episode 700, which is like almost a decade of my life's work. And the more that I learn, the more I just rest back in the fact that I actually don't know a lot when we look at the span of the universe. And even this concept, Mike, that you're talking about with angels coming in and this 2025 revolution that I think we can all feel, where the world we all know is possible is actually right here, right now. But I think it comes down to this filtering mechanism that can really only be constructed by our life and living it and having the experience of knowing what is true and knowing what is not true by going through the journey itself. We can't shortcut it. Man, every time I've tried to shortcut it, it turns into a fucking long cut. It always takes me more time when I try to shortcut the filter.
Well, I think we've all fallen into a lot of debates over many topics, and knowing, I feel like I know some things, but they're not articulable things that have anything to do with, what everybody's debating. I don't know what shape the earth is. I don't know, the answer to all this. I like to get in there and read stuff and read different viewpoints, and, it's fun, but knowledge has nothing to do with that. Knowledge is just a deeper understanding. It's going out, like you say, in nature. If I'm sitting down by the river and I'm just watching the wind go through the trees, there's a palpable resonance where you understand the intelligence behind those life forms, the trees. They're literally communicating to you. It's not intellectual. So I think we've been greatly brought into an intellectual realm, and we're trying to prove things on that level, which is impossible because we're not there. That doesn't mean we can't have great fun, but knowing is different. And it's a great freedom when you can just admit that all those outer things that we're concerned about, they really are insignificant. And it's something that, who cares anyway, because it doesn't have anything to do with your core, that can just feel the resonance. And, of course, nature is the best way to get that kind of contact. And yeah, I think we're just led astray by our brains way too often. And, you look at the internet these days, it's just, just people literally getting adversarial with each other because they're
Mm.
debating these topics that I'm very comfortable not knowing. And it's fun not to know on that level. But you can know other things that are just for you personally. They're nothing you can really share.
Mm. Yeah, and the most fun ones are the ones that are ineffable, the things that maybe words wouldn't even do them justice, because
Yeah.
you you have to actually experience them in your, for lack of a better term, second brain,
Yeah.
in your enteric nervous system. You have to feel them. And that has been bludgeoned a lot by the trappings of modernity, the conveniences and all the things that are coming in to really, they're weaponized because they seep into people's psyche unknowingly and then make people think that if you have the makeup or if you have the car or if you have the thing outside of you, then you can take a deep breath, then you'll be okay, then your life will be amazing. But what we sacrifice for that is exactly this wisdom of which you speak, because it blunts that internal compass, it blunts that intuition where, our body, our unconscious mind is telling us things all the time, telling us beautiful things. But the more we design our life, like I've designed my life here, you guys, where I'm on almost 3 acres. I built my podcast studio on the land. I walk to the podcast studio barefoot. Now, people might be listening to this and be like, oh, it must be nice for you. Y'all, I've suffered. This isn't something that just came to me overnight. Like, I've really earned this, but it's because I know the value that you're talking about, Bear. I know the value of being in nature and designing my life with like a cold plunge, a sauna, a home out in nature. No one can see into the property. It's surrounded by trees. Like, these are the things that I've constructed because I've learned over time the value of what happens when my internal locus of control through my gut, through my body is blunted. I've felt that. I lived that life for a long time. I've been there, y'all. And it's just like when Neo looked down in the Matrix when they opened the door and he was going to leave the car. And she says, well, you've already been down that road. You already know where that leads. And so once we take it upon ourselves to construct a life that's actually meaningful and that's connected to our body, it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy. But guess what? The other way is challenging too. The way of a blunted intuition and the way of ignoring that voice inside of you, the one that's connected to all things we've been speaking about. What I'm saying is there's challenge on both sides. At least I'll do the thing that's challenging, leading me towards my heart and soul, leading me towards my purpose. Because then I'm actually winning. Then I'm actually getting something meaningful. The other path, I'll just have to come back around in the school of souls and learn it over again. I think, I guess. I don't know.
Well, imagine the power we have just to be asleep. Here we have this greater, all-pervading reality that's in our face all the time, but we don't see it because we create this construct or enter into a collective matrix of sorts. That's a lot of power there to pull that off, to ignore the what becomes obvious to some people, just the universe around you, and create that little bubble and be oblivious to anything. I mean, we're the only beings on this plane that can do that. It's pretty incredible. So sometimes when we are quick to maybe point the finger at other people because we think, they're living in these sort of dream constructs. Well, join the club. We've all done the same thing, and we're all powerful spiritual beings using that unlimited creativity to create our own little worlds. I mean, that's phenomenal, and we should all be in awe of each other,
Mm.
even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this aspect of permission that comes in. I just did a team meeting last week, and we were talking about the ways in which we've all been trained to ask for permission to do almost anything, right? Whether it's academia or schools that are, by the way, the ivory towers in schools and big colleges, they're all being decentralized, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's education. I mean, all systems are cracking. I know we all can feel that right now. And it's exciting because what has been asked for permission for so long is becoming completely clear now that we actually have never had to ask for permission. We've never had to ask for permission. I mean, yeah, there's certain times like being intimate with a woman, you want to get consent. There's certain times in life where asking for permission is valid, but to ask for permission to follow your soul's journey or to follow that unlimited curiosity to which you speak, that creative capacity, that's actually a really big hoodwink that we've all believed for a long time. And I believed it for a really long time. You guys, if I would have ever asked for permission to launch a podcast, no one's going to give me permission. No one's going to give us permission to be out in nature, to eat well, to take smart supplements, to breathe, to have conscious conversations, to be a man who's vulnerable in situations where certain programming might make him weak. Like none of these things are actually yielded by permission. They're all yielded by the fact that we never have actually had to ever ask for it. But this is one of the divisiveness pieces of the matrix, is that you always must ask for permission. Therefore, the construct will either grant you or take away that permission depending on how it benefits from your decision making. And this is the part where it's conspiratorial, but I think I'm on the right podcast for this. If you go way back into the tablets from the Sumerians, there's Anki and Enlil, and a really great series on Gaia was constructed about this. I love this series. I'm blanking on the name, but Anki was the one who actually was trying to save the people, and Enlil was the one that supposedly, through recorded text, took out the piece of our DNA, of our epigenetic expression, that actually allowed us to know that we're creative beings that are birthed into this world for unlimited capacity. And so we've all been playing with this duality of like Anki and Enlil, which one are we going to listen to? And I think that's the baseline where the Matrix was built upon. I really love that because, and maybe y'all can share with me because I'm not super well versed in deep ancient history, but I love that series because it made sense to me right away. If we all drink from the river of forgetfulness, right, the river Lethe from the ancient logos, and if we all drink from it on purpose, why? Why is that part of the game that's playing out? And why did Anki try to warn us? And what was the divisive or the demonic intentions of Enlil to take out that code where we actually would know the power of God and know the power of the universe inside of us? These are the types of things that don't keep me up at night, but I have genuine curiosity that these stories are unfolding, and they've been unfolding for thousands of years. It's super wild, and I can sense there's some truth in it when I really feel into it. I wonder how you guys feel.
Did you go, Bear?
Well, there can be historical truth to that, or it can be metaphorical. It doesn't matter. And of course, there's great debates on, how we got here and who did it to us, or, whatever. But the truth is still the same. The takeaway is that we gave part of ourselves away. We
Yes.
gave into worshiping false idols. And, it all gets pretty simple if you just distill it down to our present situation. And some of us are finding it quite ludicrous to actually ask permission for anything from anybody.
For anything.
And when somebody who is an institutionalized authority figure makes a request of you that they have no right to make, and when you know that, so deep within your soul. You don't have to be combative, but you can just kind of laugh, you know, inside and just say, no, thank you. I don't accept your offer. And it's incredible when you bring that kind of inner knowing, how authority figures kind of shrivel up right before your very eyes
Oh
because
yeah. I
you,
mean,
you
think of the
take away
word,
their life.
think of the word permission, right? Through your mission. They love to invert stuff, right? The only permission you need to get is from yourself, from your higher self, because your higher self knows your mission. You came in here with a mission, with a certain job to do for your soul's growth in what I like to call here creator school.
Mm,
And
mm,
and
mm.
so yeah, the permission is per your mission, right? Or for what you're here to do. And of course, they love to invert everything, like we were talking last week around equity, how they've inverted that into diversity, equity, and inclusion. But really, the truth is that there are these fundamental, universal precepts of reality, and I think that the story of Enlil and the just like going to the Bible and Genesis, it's the same story metaphorically about the fall into
Yeah.
materium, that is required for us to go through this creator school so we can get back to source, to the divine, pure perfection. And so that forgetfulness is just us getting sort of trapped in our own ego's need to be in charge and in control here in the physical. And once again, not giving ourselves our own permission to really follow our true path. So it's the age-old story of that. And I think what we've talked about in the past with the tradition of alchemy and hermeticism, and folks like the Rosicrucians know, is once you figure this out and you get on the right path and you truly start living the way, you don't drink that cup of forgetfulness. You can actually master it in a way where you come back and you remember your previous lives, and you have now the constitution and the spiritual ability to do that without, one, your neurology being overrun, and two, doing it in a way where you're not hijacking reality for power, or for alternative means, but you're doing it in conjunction with the natural flow of how the universe works. And then now you are ascending out. So, yeah, and I think all of these stories are telling that age old story. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times the trappings of modern man's need for intelligence and need to know have positioned these stories around the prison planet here, or the Anunnaki who have stripped us from our true abilities, or the sort of this Gnostic idea of the archons controlling us. All interesting stuff, and all true to all have elements of truth because they relate to our inherent limitations we put upon ourselves. But I personally don't see those as ontological realities. I believe they are metaphorical. But as Barre said, in the end, it doesn't matter when we truly know how it all functions and how we can take control like that.
I love the metaphorical aspect because there's so much debates in religiosity about, oh, did Noah's Ark exist? We think we found Noah's Ark, and they're trying to prove the dates in which these things happened. In other words, they're looking for certainty, which is that bane of intellectualism. So really, I've always resonated with, I don't actually care if the dates are correct. I don't care if any of the stories in the Bible ever happened. It's of no consequence to me. What I look for is the story that has the teaching. And if you look at all the quote religions in the world, I think now there's, probably hundreds of thousands of different sets of beliefs. It's I'm jumping on what you said because I really love it, Mike. The story and the wisdom and the lesson that spans the test of time is the most important thing, in my opinion. It's the most important nourishment that can actually give me wisdom. But if I get intellectual and start getting caught up in like, oh, did dinosaurs happen? Did the moon landing happen? Is the earth round or flat? Like, I don't really give a fuck. What is the wisdom that I can learn from these metaphors, these stories that apply to any moment in human evolution? That's the juice for me, right? Whether
It's
it's
what some would call the perennial philosophy.
beautiful, whether it's the golden rule or
Yeah.
whether it's any of the 11 and or 12 spiritual laws, or Deepak Chopra's teachings or, Alfacast or Teal Swan. I feel like we're all doing our very, very best from our heart to understand the complexity in which we live in and apply simplicity to it, which is the ultimate form of wisdom. And that's the superpower that I'm really excited about growing in 2025 is taking these massive concepts, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, physical, the pentagon that I teach and that I am always nourishing myself with, these 5 sides of self, because then I at least have a simplistic layer that I can apply as a lens to see the complexity. Otherwise, like you both have said, I catch myself getting so caught up in the intellectualizing of this stuff that I lose the forest through the trees. I don't know if y'all can relate to this being a human being on planet Earth.
Yeah, the most influential mentor I had in my life, his favorite saying to me always was, if it doesn't grow corn, it's worthless. And, that kind of also brings us back to
Yeah.
a background in athletics, which it's just, might seem crude. On the other hand, you do things, you observe the results, and you get to prove things out. And, things have to, for me, they have to have some practical applications so I can do things and then observe the results and then, learn from that. And I think we need a little bit more of that. What I'd really like to, and I'm sure our audience would like to hear also, is just a little bit more about, the trainings you do and how you
Mm.
go about it. And if you wouldn't mind elaborating in there a little bit.
Yeah. The place I started with in 2016 was the art and the practice of breathing. And
Hmm.
and the science too. I really love the science of breath. One thing that was so just incredible to me that I learned was that we actually have 4 diaphragms. Most people think we have one,
Yeah.
but cerebral spinal fluid starts at the base and goes all the way up to the cranium. So we have four
Yep.
diaphragms in our body. And that just blew my mind. And I thought, wow, if I don't breathe either cathartically or meditatively, then I'm never circulating energy in my body properly. I'm just not. And it wasn't a shaming moment. I actually found breath through Mark Devine, who was a Navy SEAL commander, believe it or not. I was doing breath work in a room of like 50 special ops and military
Great.
minded people because I thought that was cool at that time. And I think there's some value, deep, deep value in what Mark Devine teaches. He's a very spiritual man. He went through massive training in the SEALs, and now he's come into this reckoning that the war is actually false, and he knows that, which is really cool. But what I got from that was, and it's actually tattooed on my arm in Italian. For those of y'all watching, I'm not trying to flex. I'm just trying to show you the tattoo. Se posso respirare, posso scegliere, which in Italian means if I can breathe, I can choose. Because I struggled a hell of a lot with anxiety, depression, not feeling safe, what I had shared earlier about the healing and the vision quest. But the reason I put that there is because I really wanted a barometer for truth and for trust in my life.
Hmm.
And it was through the breath that I really started a deeper journey into self. So that's my main practice. I had a program that is still live now. It's called Breathe. It's at breathwork.io. And I had about 1,000 students in that because I traveled the world. I went to Kopanjan for a month and I trained with Niraj. I trained with Anahata and I learned from Dan Brule and just all these masters in breath work because I really wanted to get the truth about the essence of why I get to do this. And then I shared that with people. And then once I started to go deeper into breathing, I started to feel things in my body that awakened that honestly terrified the shit out of me. I mean, I don't know if y'all have been through cathartic breathwork journeys. Stan Groff was kind of the godfather of
Right.
that movement with his holotropic breathing. But that was what really honestly catapulted me into other modalities. And then from breath came this practice of truly having an emotional inventory. So I have an emotional inventory process of the things that are causing me pain, of the things that I'm grateful for, and then the choice point of who I reach out to for guidance on how to let go of the thing that's actually causing me distress and how to use the thing I'm grateful for as fuel to complete the journey. But of course, the key in that is for me to be vulnerable and reach out to a mentor, reach out to a community, because as you guys know in Alfa Vedic, healing only happens in community. We're not lone wolves. And then that led me to this understanding of, well, if I'm a physical body and I'm also a soul inhabiting that body, then what is this whole financial thing? what is that all about? So I put financial at the top of the pentagon after I learned about mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual from Paul Chek, who's been a mentor of mine for a long time. Um,
Hmm.
and I made my own lens, which is this pentagon of which I speak. So I would say that that led me to where I am now, which is this understanding of, well, Josh is here to liberate himself. Josh is here to live an embodied, liberated life and to share that publicly with my audience and be as honest as I possibly can about it with my level of consciousness and maturity at that time. So it was this flow there of like breath work leading me into the journey, then understanding how to take an inventory of what I was feeling, then to understand the lens of which I see it all through, then to really get down to the gritty, 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 which is I just want to be free. I just want to be liberated. I want the same thing that all of us want. We all want to be free. We all want to be liberated, but we fall into this trap that we have to be a guru, like floating on a mountain wearing a white cape. That's not liberation. That's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of people in the world that's their path. For the rest of us, for the majority of us, we want liberation in the way we're able to give and receive love with our husband, with our wife, with our children. And so it's this conscious exploration that I'm on now at liberatedlife.com to lead a community and to lead this podcast where I'm just learning in public. I'm just learning my stuff. I'm just airing it out. And I'm being honest about what resonates with me and what grows me towards being able to give and receive love at a higher degree. And those are the modalities that I explore on a continuous basis. But I'll tell you, like you said earlier, being in a loving relationship and being a dad, that blows everything away. There's nothing in my life that's ever grown me more than when my woman holds a mirror up to me to show me where I'm not free. That's when you really learn about yourself, because the right woman or the right man comes into your life and shows you things that you didn't even know you didn't know. And then there's this humbling moment and a reorientation to the tools and practices you thought worked. And then all of that gets washed away with the tide. And then you start anew. And it's this continuous process of like, okay, what tool set, what strategy works now, but also paradoxically not falling into the intellectualism of my tool set or my pentagon being the only thing that's going to bring me closer to liberation. So that's the culmination so far. And I'm super just so stoked. I can't even contain myself about this community of liberation, because I think liberation has been one of the false flags that's been put out by the commodification of spirituality, by the fake gurus on Instagram that have $1 million a month marketing budget. But when they speak, I can tell that they haven't embodied the wisdom that they're regurgitating. And I think many of us think liberation has to be something where we're resonating at 800 on the Hawkins scale. No, liberation comes in a moment where your woman has triggered you so much and you have the tools to co-regulate and be like, you know what, I'm triggered right now. I love you. This is what I'm feeling. Can you help me work through this? That's liberation. Liberation is when I recognize my son having his normal human thing where he's crying or screaming or whatever. For me to say, hey, it's time as a dad to take a deep breath. It's time as a dad to not project onto my son what I learned from my father. That's liberation. So what I'm saying is liberation comes in small ways, sometimes big ways, but that's a way we can make liberation practical. Liberation doesn't have to be this woo-woo, crazy, esoteric thing on a mountain that we'll never touch. Liberation can happen all the time. It's happening in this podcast, right? The three of us together are becoming more liberated just because I'm learning from y'all and we're sharing wisdom and we're sharing with each other. Those are the practices that I am really stoked about right now.
You know, I've wrestled with this podcasting phenomena myself, just having been involved with it for a while. And what I've come to understand, I believe, is that we're just having a conversation. We're not trying to give truths or, pretend that we know more than anybody else. And I think the audiences that gravitate to us are people, it's like a family that forms that, we're all just yearning to have an authentic conversation. And yeah, there are spiritual gurus out there and everything, and that's fine. That's their experience. But there's an old saying, something like, those that speak don't know, and those that know don't speak. So we are
Love
simply
that.
conversing and exchanging ideas, sharing our experience with each other. And I think that's such a refreshing change from watching professional talking heads telling us what
Yeah.
is, or
Yeah.
sitting at the foot of some self-professed guru. I've come to realize that this is actually kind of a cool thing, and there's a reason why we've entered the podcasting era. And if you look at the collective of all the programs out there, there's really something for everybody. And
Oh yeah.
some of us resonate with some folks, and it's not a matter of how many subscribers. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to grow your audience and everything, but it's really not about that. It's just I like to think of it as providing a service.
That's beautiful.
I would just say I
Yeah.
think it's a return of the old. I think there was a hunger for it coming out of this 80s and 90s into the 2000s, where we had been sort of funneled into mainstream media and entertainment, and it was all served to us on a silver platter and shiny. But man, for thousands of years has settled around a fire at night after a long day of work,
I
whether in
was
the
going to
village,
say that same thing. Yeah.
and
Yep.
had
I
those
was feeling
long
that.
conversations,
Mhm.
right? And even so in the workplace, it's like the cigarette break or around the cooler talk, right? But it's really not what it was for so long. And I was going to bring this up around the convenience talk earlier on, death by 1,000 credit card swipes. And of course, what's
Yeah.
leading to that is the debt system, related to money. So it's all coming back in a major way right now. And I hate to keep bringing up the orbs thing, but I'm really feeling like 2025 is going to be like a year that humanity has, or mankind, I'm trying to watch my language here. Humans, man, woman, but we're going to be experiencing something like never known in known history. And the long form podcasting is part of that, right? This return to our true nature and our really inherent need to be connected and to live in story that is authentic, that is ours. And it is, as Bear is saying, it's decentralized through the internet. So you get to choose what you like, right? There's an open market. I mean, look at like the guy who's coming into office. If you want to say he's selected or elected or whatnot, he was on like crazy podcasts that I've been watching for a long time. Like he went on like Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, and of course the left is
Yeah.
pointing fingers now. It's because of you guys that Orange Man Bad's in. But come on. But that being said, like this phenomenon, I think is a witness to the greater reality that we are coming home to truly what we're meant to be as a man or woman. And it's really exciting to see that. And of course, what we've been doing, and I know Josh, you've been involved in respects to this too, is creating community back in the real through events
Yeah.
and gatherings and people coming back to the land and joining like we used to with raising someone's barn or helping on a work party and a permaculture work party and all these things. Like people are engaging in this way because there's an inherent need to return to this way of life. And I do think this parallel system is just going to expand massively over the next 5 years.
Man, so well said. And I feel like one of the unique challenges or resistance that we might feel as we build our communities is the novelty and the incessant pace of life itself. So that's something we all get to be aware of. The resistance that I'm talking about is and maybe you guys have felt this as you've grown your physical product line, with your supplementation and things that people are actually eating. None of that's easy to produce. What I'm saying is the right infrastructure must be built in order to keep the demands of our attention that distract us from the central community, being around the fire, sharing love, sharing wisdom with each other. That's under attack because I think the powers that be know that this is happening. They've overreached, is what I'm saying. There's been an overreaching where I think the powers that be allowed technology to flourish because they thought that they'd be able to use it to perfectly control us. But in their greed, they overreached. In their hubris, they overreached. And they did not respect humanness. They did not respect the fact that forever we have always been fed in community, in circles, by the fire, as you said. And so that's most exciting, but it's also, it has a double-edged sword, because the bigger the mission, the bigger the challenge. The more that we are having an authentic connection today that people are resonating with, the more challenging it will be to take this wisdom or nugget or one thing that any of us have said and actually start to imbue it in their life, because their life will go back to calendars and appointments and, the speed of modernity, is which I'm speaking. So I think that's the resistance that we don't need to be afraid of the resistance. I'm not saying we need to be in fear of it. Just having aware of that resistance, because I know I feel that. Like, I have an iPad on our fridge where I'm like, this is business appointments, this is family. Like, you got to get pretty tactical in this day and age, y'all, if you want to be able to operate and have your dream and your community be real. So yes, there's wisdom of us being in circles and hearing each other out, just like we're doing now. And I think podcasts remind people of that. And there's still the responsibility that in order for us to gather, that we have to be very vigilant with the attention suckers that come in, whether it's phone or people or just different energies, being really selective about where we put our attention, because the thing that would be taken away from, if we're not careful, if we don't have a clear attention, is the community itself, is that time around the fire. So it's so simple, yet in modernity, it's complex.
And out of sheer desperation to keep us all separate from each other, they have in fact reached ludicrous speeds. So
Ludicrous
it's
speed.
it's so transparent
Yeah.
that it's actually
Yeah.
entertaining. I love it.
Right.
So
Me too.
maybe
Me
if we
too.
could talk just a
Yeah.
bit more about your podcast. Now you're really pro. Mike and I, we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants. We have a lot of irons in the fire, and we just folks like you are generous enough to come talk to us. But you've developed a really pro presentation with the studio. You were very generous with us and agreed to do a remote interview. Whereas most people actually go and like a Joe Rogan sort of thing where they're
Yeah.
in your studio and everything. Can you kind of tell us how that evolved
Sure.
and how long it took?
Well, our connection was so awesome that I was inspired to present the idea of actually coming to NorCal and filming how you live. Like, that's how
Mm-hmm.
inspired I was by what was being brought forth in our conversation. And so that will happen. I'm planting the seed in the garden that happens. But how I built the podcast was actually by doing just audio in the beginning. This is like 2015, guys. I don't know if you
Ah,
remember, like Tim Ferriss was strong then. I think Lewis Howes was doing his LinkedIn thing. And so when I started, it was just audio. And then what I realized is that I was trying to hide behind the microphone. And so then once I started doing video in like 2018, 2017, 2018, that's when I started to really hit the trajectory of reaching more people, because they could see me, feel me, and hear me rather than just hearing me and maybe feeling me. And so that was when things really shifted. And it's been a testament to, let me take a breath and just get really clear here. The thing that's grown the podcast the most has been when I feel like I shouldn't say something, that I actually say it. That's what's grown the podcast the most. What's the thing that I really don't want to share, that when I share it, it feels scary, but then it liberates me and everyone else? That's the thing. That's the ultimate thing. And that's been the guiding light. And then that awareness has what's been the abundance that's afforded me to be able to get a home on almost 3 acres and have my podcast studio that I built with my hands and my videographer and designed it and like did the whole thing on my land. It feels so amazing. And then having people come into the studio has been exceptional, because, I am the steward of the land. I am the owner of this podcast studio. And I really have an ownership that's a deep reverence for me. It's a deep honor to be able to do what we do, which is have these conversations that create meaning, that create more ability to give and receive love. And so the trajectory of that has been from what I shared, like that choice point of like, am I going to share? Am I not going to share? That's been the real guiding light in growing the podcast. And actually, I'll just say this one last thing. when we start out on a dream or when we start out on a podcast, we have to be willing to let that be whatever it wants to be. The podcast was called Wellness Force since it started. So for 7 years, it was called Wellness Force and even Wellness Force Radio. Because when I was a young kid, I wanted to be a radio DJ. I would listen to like Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew at night on like my cassette player above my head. And I was like, I want to do that one day. That's super cool. And now I get to do it in my own way. The reason I'm sharing that is because when I let go of the word wellness force, it was actually through a really beautiful mushroom journey. I felt out of alignment with that etymology, the energy of the word force. Even if you
Mm-hmm.
look at Hawkins' work, Power versus Force, and this forcefulness is something that I realized came from hypervigilance that I learned to be at war with life as a child in. And that's what informed the naming of the podcast. And so as I went through this maturity process, I got rid of the word force. I didn't like the way it felt anymore. And I replaced it with wisdom because wisdom is the integration of this upside down triangle, the water, the feminine element that I have been in seeking of for so long. And that was honestly another turning point when I got even more me and even more honest about my own journey, my own maturity process in public. Then that's when everything really exploded. And so I've gotten to have some of the biggest voices in the world, like in my studio, which is so cool. And it's all come through me learning out loud, learning in public and just going for it, just being real as I can, because that realness always changes, right? But that's been the trajectory so far.
Wonderful. Well, that's what podcasts are about. You have to be your authentic self. And if you're trying to emulate somebody else, then, you know, people will see through that. Uh,
No doubt. No doubt.
yeah, we kind of wrestle with that sometimes because we have this YouTube presence. And since we are scattered in a lot of other projects, aside from podcasting, it is a good way where we can, reach more people without just being full-time podcasters. But at the same time, I find myself, and probably Mike too, I'll let him tell you, just censoring myself or after the fact saying, oh, should I have said that? And
Mm.
when Mike and I are, just on our own, in private time, we have, probably a whole different flavor. We're just kind of two guys hanging out and laughing at stuff. And yeah,
Definitely
I think we're
high school locker room vibes a bit.
so, yeah, it's an interesting experience. So now you have another website as well that has to do more with nutrition and that sort of thing, and maybe kind of more geared towards a paleo lifestyle. Is that true?
Yes, but that's not really been a focus of mine for a while.
Hmm.
It's civilizedcaveman.com. So
Okay, great
it's a
name.
way for people to start their
Hmm.
journey in more Paleolithic nutrition,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Hmm.
essentially just honoring the seasons of life, really
Hmm.
honoring the north, the east, the west, and the south, the summer, spring, fall, winter, just eating foods that are in season and just a good place for people to start. I find personally that for my constitution, when I'm eating fruits and nuts and meat and proteins of many kinds, that I just feel the best.
Hmm.
Like sourdough is great, occasional sourdough, but that hasn't really been a focus, guys, of mine. It actually, I acquired that through a mentor, through a friend. His name was George Bryant, many years ago.
Hmm.
It's funny we're talking about the journey of podcasting, right? Because
Hmm.
he actually shared with me and he shared with his community that the reason that he afforded me the ownership of Civilized Caveman as a brand is because he himself was using that brand to hide his addictions, to hide his really ideology about food and his perfectionism with his body images and whatnot. So it hasn't been a large focus for me. It's there, it exists, it lives and breathes. But just like many things where we will get excited about something, we'll see it through, and then we realize in our soul that that's not where we want to place our energy anymore. That's what that website is for me.
Hmm. I was involved with this group. We called it instinctual eating,
Mm,
and it was a clinic of sorts where people would come to heal their bodies, and food was provided, and there would be a table. Everything was raw, and there's animal products, there's vegetable, plant-based stuff, everything,
Raw meat, huh?
everything.
Huh.
And so people, the one requirement when they're choosing their food for whatever meal is they had to sniff it first, smell it. And then that gave them the information they needed to know, does that smell good? Then, okay, that means you should eat it. If not, and what smells good one day may not smell good the next day.
Yeah.
And, it just wasn't stuck on any ideology. Um, I've always liked, cooking food less, or if not at all. But yeah, it worked brilliantly. And the point I'm trying to make is diet should be instinctual, and we should get in touch with that and just eat what you feel like. Now, diet can also be a strategy. When I was playing ball, I used to wake up every morning just to maintain my body weight, and I'd have a 12 egg raw shake, just like gulp them down. And before bed, I'd chug a gallon of whole milk, and that
Damn.
was, and that's how I, maintain playing weight of, what I needed to play at the level I played at,
Mm.
which is good because I didn't have to succumb to roids and drugs, and, got good strength and could do what I needed to do. I mean, obviously that's not the healthiest thing, but it was a strategy. It was a goal that I wanted. But then after that, it just kind of fell in more to, just kind of slim down and, in martial arts and things. And then just let my body tell me what to eat every day. And I think with diet, we have so many diet gurus out there that are telling us what to eat and what's good. And I just don't believe the world works like that. And it's also maybe robbing people of just developing that little inner knack of knowing exactly what they need every moment. Or maybe
That's
stop eating, for altogether,
yeah.
for however long.
Have y'all heard of CGMs, continuous glucose monitors?
Now tell us about it.
It's a patch you wear on your arm, and there's a
Oh
Seeing
yeah,
needle.
those
I'm aware of
I'm
those. Yeah,
seeing those everywhere. My son
yeah.
was just asking,
Yeah.
why everyone wearing these patches, Dad?
So whether it's like a CG, it's this whole branch of wellness called wellness technology.
Mhm.
And I fell into a trap where I would like in 2017, 2018, I would go speak at like CES, and I was all about wellness technology.
Mhm.
Earlier I mentioned we get excited about something and then we realize that it's not our true calling. It was just a teacher along the way.
Mhm.
And what I noticed with all of these people, you guys, that were like the CEOs of these companies, they were totally unhealthy. They were totally unhealthy. And I would have conversations with them backstage, and it would be like, oh, well, we're seeing the white space in the market, and we really think that this will do well. And it's like, this is just the wrong motivation, right?
Yeah.
I wear a sleep tracking ring, but I love it because it allows me to be smart about the way I supplement.
Mhm.
And that's it. I don't wear it. I guess you could use it as a external locus of control for like step tracking. I think that could be really healthy for lifestyle modification for
So
people.
how does that
Um,
work, or what does it tell you?
So this ring is called an ultra human ring. There's other
Mhm.
ones out there, but
Oh,
I
I've
really
heard of
like
those.
this one the
Yeah.
most. And it measures your stages of sleep. It measures your heart rate. It measures, I believe,
Interesting.
oxygen saturation as well. I don't know how
Mhm.
accurate that is compared to like a Massimo you'd wear on your
Mhm.
finger.
Right.
But then it also really gives you a comprehensive score, and it compares your data set to other people's data, and it tells you, your heart health age, things
Mhm.
like that. Take that with a grain of salt. The way I see wellness technology is really just this mirror or this
Mhm.
reminder in the busyness of modernity where we can use an external locus of control to more fine tune our internal
Mhm.
locus of control. Because the internal locus is the one that matters most. The trap, though, because there's always a trap, right? There's always a trap, dude. You could go to the other side of it and you could have a Whoop band, a ring, a CGM, and you could spend your whole life tracking your life without ever actually having an intuitive signal from your body,
Yeah.
or like you said, the sniff test, to know that naturally, without all these buttons and gadgets and craziness, how to just live well. So if you use it smartly and you're conscious, like one device or one thing, I think it could be really helpful. But the trap is just like anything else. Anything done too much or in excess becomes the master. And then
Mhm.
we're not the master of us. These devices become the master, which is the paradox of technology in a nutshell.
They can be fun tools though. When we were training athletes, back in the early days, we used heart monitors, but we used them a little differently. We figured out the parameters unique to each person, where we could figure when a person was entering sympathetic, and
Yeah.
over time we trained ourselves so that like you're out there doing 440 repeats or something on the track, or maybe doing heavy squats in the gym. It took some time and it was a little frustrating, but you'd get there if you stuck with it. You could actually train yourself to stay in a parasympathetic mode, even when, normally your heart would be pounding, and it was just a great feedback mechanism. And then after a while, you didn't need the heart monitor. You knew when you were in sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Our reason for doing that is if you're in a competition, whether you're in a fight or you're a sprinter or a long distance trainer, when you normally hit the wall, it wouldn't happen. You had a much higher threshold. And so you stayed in parasympathetic and could achieve different feats that normally you wouldn't be able to in parasympathetic. But then when you needed to push on the afterburners, you had a whole lot more to go. Now you hit the sympathetic pedal, but you exceed far beyond what you were able to before when you were in sympathetic all the time, and then you just hit the wall that much faster. So it was a great tool. And
Barre, did you relate that to breath as well? We've done some shows in the past about controlling your breath through the nose versus the mouth.
Well, nose for parasympathetic, and
Yeah.
it was quite challenging at first. You're repping out a set of 10 with 405 squats, doing deep squats, and breathing through your nose the whole time. Very challenging, but you get to the point where you could do it. And if you're an athlete and you're used to just going for it all the time, I'd get out on the track and other people we're training with, and you'd have to slow way down for a while, which is very frustrating, to stay in that zone. But then pretty soon you could do more and more within that zone. And it was great.
You know what I think is really cool is I've been using these strips. They're called intake breathing. I don't know if y'all have seen this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It spreads open your septum.
A lot of athletes use them.
And then using mouth tape, like this company Boucher is the one that I love. It actually sticks. When you have a beard, you need something that sticks. The other tape, it just like falls off in the middle of the night. But I love doing that because I've definitely seen the scores on my deep sleep specifically. So the deep sleep is like very restorative. And I've noticed that when I use the strip and mouth taping, I'm training my body to sleep and to breathe in and out only through my nose, because the mouth is actually obstructed. I mean, there's a piece of tape on it. And then I have that airway that's not occluded, the air can actually flow in there. And I've seen the data. That's something cool to play with, is to actually use data as a curiosity enhancer instead of just a monster that keeps you stuck and gives you shame about not making enough steps. I think there is a beautiful side to technology, to wellness technology, as long as the intention is to train your intuition and to train yourself. Like you had curiosity with the athletes because you're like, hey, how can we have them perform better? Like that was a genuine curiosity for you. But the other side of it is like they can really become a domineering tyrant for a lot of people. And the most of the people that want these technological devices are the ones that maybe actually just need to slow down and not have any technology around them at all, but yet they gravitate towards it because there's a pseudo certainty or safety in the data is going to teach me, right? So it's an interesting path.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more question since we're in the locker room here. Have you experienced the restrictive blood flow bands while you're working out, where you deliberately cut off the blood flow? They're like blood pressure cuffs. You can put them on your arms and your legs. And you train with them. Now you train lighter, you have to, but because you're restricting the blood flow, you get more out of it. And also great for rehabbing injuries when you can't, train as heavy as normal. There's actually a doctor that's wanted to come on with us. He's all into this and everything, but just wanted to float it by you, see if you've experienced that at all. I have a set. I bought some, and I haven't got around to really giving them, a consistent test because I just hate putting things on when I'm working out. But I think I'm going to give it a go and stick with it for a while to see if it works.
I think it's fun. To me, it
Hmm.
seems like a bit of a biohack that may not be the first hanging fruit you'd want to pick. But if
Yeah,
you're right, if you've already addressed flexibility and you've
yeah,
addressed stabilization and strength and
yeah,
power, then
hmm,
yeah, like play with these things and
yeah,
see if
hmm,
they're going to benefit you. I've never worn them. It makes sense though, because if you're trapping the blood and then
hmm,
you get the actin myosin hooks, and those are the things that
yeah,
tear, and then that creates the lactic acid, it would make sense scientifically that um, in the sarcomere there'd be more tearing, which would mean essentially more repair,
yeah,
which by the way you only get through sleep. So if you're
yeah,
sleeping like shit, it doesn't matter if you're wearing the bands, right? So I think it's cool. I think it's fun, but it's like red light therapy or
yeah,
any of these other biohacks. I
yeah,
think they're more just fun and playful and novel, but
hmm,
I don't think they should be a starting place for people when it comes
yeah,
to training or the body. But it seems fun.
yeah. I've got my red light there behind me, which I only use in winter time when we're light restricted here and you're in the middle of monsoon
Yeah.
season, then you can get a little photonic therapy and, stimulate your cells that way. But yeah, if the sun's shining, I'll take the sun any old day.
Have you guys played around with red light therapy and methylene blue? Has that come up in your
Yes.
conversations at all?
We've
The whole
talked a lot about
podcast on it.
methylene blue. We had
Okay.
a doctor on who's the creator of transcriptions, which are
Hmm, hmm.
methylene blue,
Yeah.
lozenges, and I kind of believe it. I've used it in different periods, and I feel pretty good. I feel like okay, I think I feel it, but
Hmm, hmm.
long term, you know, I don't think I need it.
Red
But
light, blue
it
Yeah.
light.
supposedly stimulates mitochondrial activity and everything. But then, we're Mike and I are going to do a little show pretty soon where we're going to discuss how mitochondrial production of energy through ATP is actually a secondary, very crude source of energy production. And your primary energy production is through light and melanin because
Mm.
it produces an infinitely greater amount of energy and it's perpetual. You don't need any input. You don't need to keep having, foodstuffs come in and oxygen to create one-way implosion technologies or explosion technologies. It's like literally a two-way perpetual energy, 0 point superconductivity sort of affair. And and it also shows that we don't get most of our energy from food, and the more efficient you become, then you derive more just directly from the source through this dissociation and reassociation of hydrogen and oxygen, which releases electrons. And we think that, getting oxygen in your system through hemoglobin, that's kind of a crude way. It's like plants with chlorophyll. We actually conduct photolysis, which is, again, perpetual energy right out of thin air. So I think the more we start to understand that and capitalize on it, and there's ways to capitalize on it, then we will probably look at the old biohacking of trying to, force feed our mitochondria is going to become, kind of antiquated. I think it already is.
The
Obviously,
light
it's a
from.
normal cellular function, but it's not the primary energy source for our body.
Mm.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Go ahead, Mike. Were you going to say something?
No, you go first, please.
Okay, I was going to ask the follow up. So, what I feel when I've done it, especially when I'm maybe going through an upgrade in my
Hmm.
immune system, which maybe that's a
Hmm.
conversation for another podcast. I know you all and
Hmm.
Alex Zach have specific views on that, which I'm learning about, but I'm early in my discovery process
Hmm.
of terrain and virology. But I feel like when I'm run down or when my
Hmm.
system is
Hmm.
taxed, if I do take the methylene blue, and I get it from a company called Mitozen, Dr. John Laurence, and I'll
Hmm.
sit in the sauna space. Now, not the regular heat sauna, but the
Hmm.
actual photon light, which penetrates through bone instead of
Hmm.
just the heated sauna grid. I feel better. I just feel
Hmm.
better after I do it. Now,
Yeah.
whether it's anecdotal placebo or
Hmm.
whether it's actually physiology expressing that better feeling, I can't tell,
Hmm.
but there's something to say on both sides of that, whether it's placebo or whether it's actually physiological. I just like how I feel. My lady doesn't like it though when I stain the toilet blue because you pee blue. You pee
Yeah,
blue when when you do that. You got to watch out for
uh,
that, guys. You're gonna pee
yeah.
blue.
If you have guests and they see a blue toilet bowl, you just tell
I
them
know.
it's one of those
Who
cleansers
cleans
or
your
something.
house?
Well, and your
Yeah,
mouth can
but I
be all blue too, and your tongue.
that's true. But I was going to ask you. Oh, so the follow up on that was all right. So are you talking about light being a feeder to the body from sunlight specifically, or from other man made light sources? Because that was
Sunlight.
interesting.
But it
Sunlight,
can
exactly.
happen with red light therapy too. Now, out in
Hmm.
nature, photosynthesis, I think, is like about a 400 to 700 bandwidth range that makes photosynthesis happen. Whereas melanin, hydrogen, oxygen, electron release happens at a much broader, like about 400 to 900, in the wavelength. So it's much more efficient in extracting, from all different waves of, and that's all natural light. Now,
And
if
it's
it's a
full spectrum.
winter,
It's full spectrum light.
yeah. In the wintertime, if I'm not outside like I usually am, the other half of the year, I definitely feel better when I do a red light every other day.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
If
And
Yeah.
you've used your body a lot. You know when you feel good or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great barometer because in the winter I do more vitamin D, but then
Yeah.
I'm still one guy I'd love to introduce you to is Brian. He created Sauna Space with this photon bulb technology. He'd be
Okay.
amazing for
Hmm.
y'all. But it's much different than the infrared, the far near and mid infrared that you might get from like a traditional
Yeah.
USA made sauna. Totally different. That's not what I'm talking about. It's actually the photobiomodulation that you get through the red that I
Hmm.
think, based on my research and my own feeling, helps for cellular cleanup and helps for
Hmm.
renewal. And that's what I can stand on as far as the podcasts I've done with him and using it in my own life,
Yeah, I'd like to
especially in the
see that.
winter.
If you could share a link with us later,
Yeah,
I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
I try to maintain my tan year round now, and I do that by getting out and surfing, snowboarding, getting out, jumping in a cold plunge in the river, which I did for the first time. Bear, it's cold now. It's cold. I did for the first time this season. And I think really the reason why we have winter is everything slows down and composts and resets. But I think it's going
Yeah.
back to that the earlier discussion around our journey in the physical, and it's here to test us. And it's not fun always to go barefoot out in the cold and get
Hmm.
grounded and all that. But I think when we do that and when we go through that, those micro tests of the coming of age, which we're always should be doing, I think keeping that old man out of our system.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel the best when I'm doing that than trying any biohacking. I do have some fun stuff here, of course, that I like to do because in the modern life we get busy, right? And it's not always easy to do that. But if we can
Guys,
make that part of our practice to at least get
yeah.
the feet outside on the grass, even if it's snow covered, and that's great for you too, like walking in the snow, jumping in a cold plunge in a river or lake, or if you can get to an ocean, which I'm actually going to go try to do later today. I haven't surfed in a while. But yeah, man, like that's when I feel best. And I think that's just, once again, going back to the old ways, right? That's what we're all relearning.
I don't know if y'all could tell, but for the first like 30 minutes of this alpha cast, I was shaking, I was shivering because I had just gotten out of my plunge. I,
Oh.
and I keep it at 44 just for the fun part that I'm 44 years old. But it's cold, dude. So you do 44 degrees at 3 minutes, you're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
shake
Yeah.
for a while. And
Yeah.
and there's some incredible benefits. It's not just what we see on Instagram with like some girl in a thong. Look at me, I'm doing a cold plunge. The real value I think we get from cold plunging
So you don't
is a
like
lot
girls
of
in thongs?
I mean, I definitely love that, but it has to be my lady. I love her in a thong. Okay. The other
Should be
ones,
very
it's like
careful to say that.
exactly. I love her in a thong in the cold plunge. But the reason I love it is because it teaches me about regulating myself. Because when you're in
Yeah.
the cold, there's nothing else that matters besides your breathing. If your thoughts take you somewhere, your breath will bring you right back. Because when the icy cold water is chomping at your skin,
Yeah.
I mean, there's nowhere to go. So I actually think cold plunging is much different than what people get excited about it for. I think cold plunging is about teaching you how to be in your trigger in relationship or regulate your emotions when you're experiencing a stressor or a threat, which is what sauna and cold or arguing with your wife is. They're all perceived stressors by the neural tree, by the nervous system. So I really love cold plunging for that reason, first and foremost. And then, of course, I love the endorphins I get afterwards, right?
Yeah.
I just feel good. I'm like, yeah, I'm freezing right now. I did cold plunge the other day and it was like 34 degrees outside. And it was actually warmer in the cold plunge than it was outside. And then I did push-ups afterwards because why not? We're here in the body. Let's use the
Yeah,
body. Let's feel good in our body.
you have that great tingling sensation after, and yeah.
It's
I
so
mean,
I
good.
used to surf in cold water before, all the fancy wetsuits were, and there's so we lived in this Northern California beach town, Stinson Beach. So we had a long beach. So I do like a 6 mile loop run. And then our house is right on the beach, when Deb and I were first together. And then I just grab my board and trunk it and go out, and that
Wow.
was
Wow.
just north of the San Francisco Bay there. And, it was, I don't know what the temperature was, but it was cold. But did
55
that
probably.
every single day. That's how I started my day, and just great. Never felt run down or low resistance or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, it's the best. It's 53 degrees right now, and I'm going, and I've got the
Woo.
wetsuits and stuff. But when you're in the water for an hour and a half, and I've been trying not to wear my gloves, my neoprene gloves, because I like one benefit of cold too is of course, the traditional stuff around inflammation, but I've had chronic issues from 20 years of computer work with one of my wrists where I couldn't even bend my hand back at all. And just from surfing with cold water for the last 2 years, it's completely, I say 55, 70% repaired itself just from having
Amazing.
my hands for a long, long time in cold water. So I mean, yeah, they say that there's all you need is 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Around that time for when you're doing 40 degrees around that, but 50 degrees, 55 degrees, and you're in for an hour and a half. I think it's just phenomenal. Uh, Phenomenally good for you. And then not only that, but you're getting the natural sun on you, you're getting the natural air and everything around with nature and stuff. We said this enough, and I hate to beat a drum, and I know I'm way late to the game, Bear, and you and Bryden been doing it forever, but surfing to me is the greatest activity you can do. Like it really is, because it's with nature. You're competitive with yourself because you want to get better, but then also it calms your ego down. It like takes you to a place of such humbleness. And then it's just completely amazing for your
And the
health.
surfing mentality is fantastic because there's an old saying, the best surfer is the one that's having the most fun.
Yes.
That's authentic old school Hawaiian surfing. Then I moved to the islands for 20 years and turned into a total pussy for cold water. And since we moved back to Northern California, um, I got to get myself back out there in the cold water. I just hate
Well,
putting a
y'all will not
wetsuit
be
on.
finding me with shorts on in 50-degree surfing. I'll need the wetsuit.
The wetsuit technology is
Oh my
phenomenal now,
God.
though. The wetsuit
So,
technology is so good now.
yeah.
Like I used to not surf back in the day because I felt like I could barely swim in those when I lived in Santa Barbara in college. They were so stiff and difficult. Now they have this like all this technology where you barely feel like you have it on. It's phenomenal.
So, Josh, I think we've taken up enough of your time. I don't want to abuse your generosity, and I'm kind of forgetting that we even have an audience out there. I just feel like we're having a talk here. Before we wrap it up, we'd like you to share all your links and everything where people can find you, and then any other last words that you'd like to say.
Yeah, I'm just grateful. I'm really grateful to connect with y'all. And I do a lot of podcasts, as I'm sure, people out there listen to a lot of podcasts. Y'all do a lot of interviews of yourself and others. And there's just really unique vibrational connections that I make, like this one, that just deserve a breath and gratitude. So thank y'all for having me, because I just so enjoy it. And it's because I sense a mutual curiosity around this magic of life. And I really love that because you're both very articulate. I do my very best to articulate my heart in a way where I think people can understand it and feel it. And so there's like many things that I feel like we share. But the one thing that if anybody watching or listening is resonating with is this concept of liberation, then head over to liberatedlife.com. That's the community that we're launching. We've been building it in 2024, so we're launching it in 2025. And then if you are curious about gathering more wisdom and being in multiple communities at once, you take from abundance, abundance is still there, right? Just because you're part of the Alfacast movement doesn't mean that you can't be involved in other movements as well. And so the podcast is wellnessandwisdom.com. So those are the two best places to get involved with the stuff that I'm thinking is really cool and fun and humbling and amazing at the same time. But you can probably just go on ChatGPT or Google and search my name, and it would be like pages of things to explore as well. But those two links are the best places to start.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. And I hope we see you up here. We'd love to show you around and let you do some filming and everything. That would be great fun.
Yeah, look for that. The Alfacast community, look for a documentary next year, mid to end of next year, that'll really give you a behind the scenes look at how Mike and Barre live, what it's like to actually be in harmony with the land. And I just want to selfishly know, I'll just be honest with you. And then I want to share that with my audience.
Just be
in the
fun
world.
to hang out.
Yeah,
And I'd
just
like
be
to
fun to learn.
Yeah, I'd like to extend to you and your whole family a very merry and politically incorrect Christmas.
Perfect. Happy everything.
Festivus for the rest of us. Hey, Josh, it was awesome, man. Thanks so much for the stimulating conversation. If you guys enjoyed this and want more Josh, please go over to his website and check him out. It's in the show notes below, wellnessforce.com. He does phenomenal work. And yeah, really looking forward to hosting you out here in the great state of Jefferson. We'll get you in the water, or at least get you on the river, and maybe we'll do
River's good.
some rafting.
River and ocean are good. It'll be warmer then, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
We'll do some kayaking maybe, or there's
River's
just
cold here.
endless stuff.
Ice cold because it comes right out of the mountains. I'm on the South Fork and it actually comes subterranean. So even in the summertime, it's cold.
Okay. Sounds like a perfect cold plunge.
Yeah, it's a good cold plunge, and we're about 10 degrees warmer on this side, where the North Fork comes down. So good summer swimming. So you can kind of do your cold back and forth. In fact, where I live, the Middle Fork comes in where the North Fork comes into the Smith Rivers, and we have a swimming hole there, and it is almost sometimes 10 degrees difference. And there's one little outcropping of rock where the two rivers are coming in, and you can go back and forth in between and feel the massive temperature change. It's really fun.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. But we'll be stoked to host you here and your whole fam. And if I don't know if you're gonna head out to Confluence this year, but it looks like I might be going back down to Texas.
Great.
So and to hang out with our boy Alex Zek. And I'd love to make it over to Austin and see everybody. So we'll stay in touch. And
Please.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this convo. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, show Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back. And we're taking the next week off for the Christmas celebration. Wishing you the merriest of Christmas and the happiest of holidays. So much gratitude for you guys in this community. We just can't say enough of how appreciative we are of all y'all. And we look forward to a stimulating and fun and very powerful year of change for 2025. We'll be back after the new year with a fun show. I think we're going to do the Melanin show maybe on that one. So kick off the year with that, and love you guys. And we'll see you on the platform. Remember, we have the private platform, alfavedic.com/join-us. And that is our private community platform. You can join and continue the conversation. Love you guys. We'll see you around the bend. Peace.